Hello all, welcome to another What If series. With me as always, Honstar. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, brother. Doing good. It's my weekend, so I'm just relaxing. It's my
Ah,
Sunday.
there you
Unfortunately, I
go.
have to go back to work tomorrow, but
Yeah, that's
I
unfortunate.
always enjoy these conversations, so I'm doing good, man.
Yes. Well, today we've got a wingdinger. Today we're going to talk about what happens if Russia had fallen in World War II and there no longer was a second front. So there's two possibilities, as we discussed before we hit the play button. Um, there's two scenarios. One, Russia falls from within, or two, Germany takes out Russia. So I think we'll do the second one, the fall within, because that's the most unlikely scenario,
Yeah, I agree.
and then we'll go with the one that probably was the more realistic idea, which is Germany takes over Russia. So for Stalin, he ruled with an iron fist. Everybody knows this. This is nothing. This is not news to anybody. However, the Communist Party itself always had people waiting in the wings to stab the leader in the back
Yeah,
and take power.
that's that's always kind of the
Yeah,
communist thing. No matter what country you look at that's communist, there's always that person over here,
yeah.
kind
Person
of
in the shadows
kind
waiting
of
to. Yeah,
kind of waiting for something to purposely or accidentally, unfortunately, happen to who is currently in charge.
yeah. So in order for that to happen, I think it would have to happen early 42.
Yeah, I
Uh,
agree.
it would have to happen right after the attack happens, and Stalin. Let's say Stalin goes into retreat and never comes out, and then they stage a coup at that point. I think that's the only point where you could historically see a coup happening.
Yeah, they
Is
they
if
they basically convince everybody that Stalin is inept now as a
yeah
leader
has
because
abandoned them and is no
he's
longer
went
fit to
into
lead.
to hiding
Yeah,
or however you want to say it.
yeah.
So,
He's
uh,
given up. He's
yeah,
abandoned the fatherland or
yeah.
the motherland.
So we
Um,
need a we need somebody that's here right now, not
yeah,
somebody that's hiding somewhere.
yeah. So I think that's historically the only point where a coup could have worked. Because
Yeah,
if Stalin's in power and in Moscow, he's too paranoid. Anybody that would have gotten close would have been executed or sent to fucking the gulag.
yeah,
So that's about the only point in history where if there was going to be a coup, it could have been pulled off, is when he's in his retreat and the Germans look like they're just going to steamroll Russia, and somebody decides, okay, now we launch the coup, and Stalin is kind of isolated. He's in his little retreat home. It'd be very easy to isolate him and take him out,
yeah,
as opposed to him being in the capital. So that's the only place in history I see a coup being able to take place, is
yeah.
at that juncture.
I agree.
Any other time, Stalin's got too tight a grip on power to be able to do anything. That's typically that's his weakest point. So
Yeah,
if the coup idea is going to happen, that's when it has to happen. Is when Stalin has that little breakdown and he goes into hiding for 3 days. That's about the only time that I see that they could have pulled off a coup and it been successful.
yeah, and you have, as we have historically seen in other instances, you have like generals or people like that all of a sudden want to assert themselves as
Yeah,
the better alternative.
yeah. So that's about the only time where Stalin is off foot and weak enough that a coup could have happened.
Yeah,
And then then it becomes, is the new government, then it plays out two ways. One, either A, they rally the troops like Stalin did historically, or B, they side with Germany
Yeah.
and like a
To to
fascist movement within the
to
communist.
to basically save their own ass.
Yeah, where
They
they just go for a peace treaty,
yeah.
i.e., World War One.
Yeah, they side with Germany to save their own ass, but then as you were just saying, you also have to think of the ramifications of even Stalin being taken out from within.
Yeah,
What does that look like as far as how long does that take? Because yes, you may have one faction that could step forward and people would rally behind, but then you also basically, as we kind of talked before you hit the
yeah.
record
If
button,
Russia falls into civil war, which is
yeah,
what happened during World War
yeah,
One,
it would basically be a Russian civil war.
yeah,
And what does that look like? How long does that take? And what do the
that
Germans
spells
do in the
disaster. Because
meantime? Yeah,
if Germany's unwilling to sign a peace treaty and they're fighting within, plus fighting the Germans, that never ends well.
yeah,
That just doesn't end well. So that could realistically see Russia falling if Stalin is taken out by coup.
yeah.
Um, Although I just, as fearful of Stalin that everybody was at the time, I don't see them having the balls to
Well,
do
and
it.
well, and Stalin himself, even if he's somewhat retreated, I don't see him retreating enough that a coup could take place. If you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
because he was always paranoid of a coup from the time he took
Yeah.
power to the time he died. He was always looking for the knife in the back
So
all the time.
I,
So I
I,
mean,
I basically think the coup from within in that time frame, and we talked about this before you hit the button, but is basically not really even a thing that could have
no,
happened.
I mean
Uh,
it's
I
a
mean,
nice thing to think about,
yeah, and I
but
mean,
too many things have to go.
there is a
Yeah,
small chance, but there's just so many cogs
yeah,
that would have
and
to come
the
together.
amount of fear that his subordinates had of Stalin. I mean, it took them 3 days to see if he was okay when he went into hiding. Like,
Yeah, it's and and
um,
and even in retreat, I don't see because of the fear he struck into
yeah,
every. We won't even say like, oh, we're the Russians, we're awesome. We'll take it as fear. The fear that he struck into everybody, especially the military.
yeah,
Even if he was in retreat, I don't see them launching a coup because even from a retreat position, he is going to very fiercely still exert his rule over the Russian people and the military.
yeah. So now we'll transition over to the secondary option, which is the Germans take out Russia. Now, a lot of people in hindsight look back at World War II and go that Germany was stupid for attacking Russia. And in
Yeah,
hindsight, they're correct. At the time, however, not so much. Because if we look at how the players actually stacked up, Germany knew that the United States was no threat in 42 or 43. They were no threat in 42, 43.
yeah, they were still on, as we talked about before this. They were still on the buildup.
Yeah,
They as we have said historically, the United States post war cripples the military basically,
yes. I mean,
especially the Navy. But they
after,
cripple the military
I mean,
after
if you look at
wars.
just before Pearl Harbor and just after Pearl Harbor, the soldiers training at the time had trucks with the paint with paint on the side of them, marking them as a tank.
Yeah.
Troops were
It
were
was
learning how to do drill with guns, and they weren't using guns, they were using sticks that looked like
well,
guns.
and
Like,
it's it's the all and honestly, I'm an American. You know that.
yeah,
Most people that watch this, I'm sure, know that. It's the audacity of Americans that we're awesome. We're the best superpower. So they cripple the military after wars, and they think, oh,
yeah, your Congress has a bad habit of that.
we're just gonna do this Mickey Mouse stuff of we'll give people wooden dowels with stocks on them
Yeah,
and give them tanks,
yeah,
and we're gonna still train, but we're the awesome United States. Nobody's gonna mess with us, and unfortunately, we get caught in history many times with our pants down around our
yeah.
ankles because of that.
Excuse me. So, in a sense, Germany knew that if they could take Russia out within 2 years, although for some reason Germany thought they could do it in a year, but if they could do it within 2 years, realistically, they could get rid of Russia before the Allies were built up enough to attack from the West. If they'd cleared out the Eastern Front and taken Russia before the Allies had built up enough, then it's a whole new war, because then the Germans would have access to all of the tank building equipment in Russia. They'd have the material that the Russians had. They'd have the oil in the Caucasus, which was most important. If Germany has the oil of the Caucasus, their oil problem is no longer an issue. And it's also far enough inland that the strategic bombing raids that to fly a plane from London to Moscow or north of Moscow into Siberia to stop those plants from making armaments is very unlikely. Planes didn't have that kind of distance at that point.
Yeah.
Just making it from Berlin to London was a pain in the ass. Fighters were definitely not doing it.
Oh no.
So,
Yeah, definitely.
so that's just not logistically possible. So if Russia falls, and the only way, like we were talking about before, the only way I could see Russia falling is if they invade Moscow, and in the invasion of Moscow, Stalin is killed. If Stalin's killed in the invasion of Moscow, then the Germans have a good chance of being able to take over the country,
Yeah.
just on the premise that if Stalin's removed, the power vacuum that would be left would either result in A, civil war, or B, a puppet government put in by the Germans.
Yeah. Which again, the United States really likes to do that in countries.
Yeah.
Help countries, and then
Yes.
put
Yes.
in a government that
Yes.
and
Yeah.
I agree. I totally see that. If Stalin was killed and the Germans could interdict in time and kind of mold things for their benefit, I could totally see the Russian people, first of all, being like, "What the crap?
Yeah. Our
Stalin is
leader has fallen.
yeah. What the crap? Stalin has fallen and or been killed." And then, as you said, you have the power vacuum, but then you have these other people come in, aka Germans, and they're like, "Well, we can do this, we can do that," and they would probably come in with
Stalin would be painted as an evil villain. All of his
and
purges would have been made public.
and the
Because what a
Germans.
lot of people don't understand is it would have been very easy for when the Germans first invaded Russia, they were seen as saviors up until they started executing people at random.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
it-
because
they
you
really could
had,
have.
as far as the everyday man goes, living under Stalin was not good.
Not no. The Ukraine got nailed. Like
Yeah, so if
when Germany first invaded, they were seen as saviors
yeah,
by most
because
Russians.
you could have
Um,
things again like bread to eat.
yeah. So if they had for the at least for the interim for the beginning part dialed back on the mass executions and rounding up of people and
Yeah,
stuff like that, if they had lowered back on that, pulled back on that, it could have been a very different war, because originally they were seen as saviors because Stalin was not a nice dude. Okay.
yeah.
He sent a lot of people to the gulag and he sent a lot of people to the executioner, uh,
Well,
just for looking at him sideways.
and even military wise during
Oh
the
yeah,
fighting,
military wise, oh
there
you're
was
too
lots
popular.
never
You must die.
and they had the whole never retreat thing where they would
Yeah,
shoot their own
yeah.
troops if they tried to retreat. So
Well, that was after the attack. After Stalin comes out of hiding for 3 days, then Stalin gives the no retreat order, not a step further. Once he gets his kahunas back.
well, I mean,
So
we all need a little break.
yeah. So, or as the modern historians say, after he got rested from being burnt out from working every day and long hours
Well,
and
I mean,
yeah,
everybody needs a long weekend every now
yeah,
and then,
he just
Rob.
needed a long weekend. It was all good.
Everybody needs a long
Um,
weekend.
yeah. Uh, but so the only way I see this happening is one of two ways. One, the Germans do anti-German stuff and for the time, and come in as a liberating force, and even if it's just temporary, they get the Russians on side, which they could have done if,
Yeah,
as I said, if they didn't bring in the hit squads and
especially
etc.
especially the bulk of the everyday
Yeah,
Russian.
your everyday farmer Russian.
If they
Yeah,
come in bringing things like bread and food,
yeah,
things you may or may not have had,
yeah,
they come in like you said as a savior. Hey, we
yeah,
have these things that you need to live even a basic life
yeah,
that you've not had. Hey, everybody, we're really good guys.
yeah,
Side with us. Obviously, you've had a bastard ruling over you. So hey, come along, join
yeah.
the
If they had
train.
come in with honey instead of a bat, that could have that's one way the war could have changed.
Yeah,
Historically, I don't see it happening because it's just not in their nature. However, if they had, there is a good possibility that Russia falls from within because they're seen as the great saving country to save them from the evil dictator known as Stalin.
yeah,
Um, so okay, so you get that, or the secondary is an attack on Moscow happens, and during the attack, Stalin's killed. If Stalin's killed and say his top 3 lieutenants are taken out at the same time, the power vacuum that's left from that, I see a more than ample chance that the Germans come out on top on that one.
well, yeah, because that power vacuum would not resolve itself
No,
in a timely in a
no,
timely manner. So, I mean, we're talking days, weeks, months for that power vacuum to settle down and one person to finally push to the front
Yeah.
and take his place. And
And
in
in
the
all
meantime,
likelihood, by that time, Germany has secured the capital. And the only chance that we get is the only chance they've got is to side with the Germans.
yeah,
And then you end up with like a puppet government like in France, the Vichy France, Vichy French would be the same scenario in Russia.
yeah. And then the Germans have access to, as we said earlier, before we went on the recording, access to all these natural resources, which was why they basically attacked
Yeah,
Russia to start with, is because they needed the natural resources to feed the war machine.
yeah. So
So
if
you have
if
a
let's say by the end of 43 this all happens, you don't even need to do it by the end of 42. You could do it by the end of 43. Russia falls at the end of 43 or middle of 43.
that makes a totally different outcome to me to the war, or at least
Yeah.
a much longer and bloodier
Yeah,
outcome
it'd be
to
a
the war.
lot bloodier of an affair because then a lot of the manufacturing for weapons could be done in Russia
Yeah,
in a location that the Allies couldn't logistically get to,
yeah,
and then it just becomes transportation to the front. And if the front is in the west, it's just a buildup.
yeah. So it actually begs the question: would the Allies even have been victorious in World War II if this
Probably
scenario,
not.
yeah, if this scenario
That's why
happened?
it's
And I
actually
agree with
why
you.
the
Yeah, I agree
Allies
with you.
bit the bullet and gave the communists so much support.
Yeah, because
It
they
was
didn't
because
want
if
them to
Russia
fall.
fell, they were fact.
Yeah, they realized that if Russia fell, whether we like Russia, like we said earlier, the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yeah,
We didn't like Stalin and the Russians to start with. It made sense for the greater good of the war in Europe to keep the second front going and to also not let the Germans have access to the things they would have had access to if
yeah,
they had steamrolled into Russia and been able to successfully take over
yeah,
Russia and occupy it.
yeah. So
Because
if
then there's no second front.
no
You have more troops
more
for
troops, more ammunition,
yeah,
more material,
more fuel, more
yeah. Well, the oil
everything.
problem would be no more. If
And
they successfully capture the Caucasus without the Caucasus going up in smoke, um, then Germany's oil problem is solved
well,
in one fell swoop.
and to me, not only the oil, the fuel problem, but you basically have to look at it as there would be more of everything.
Yeah,
More fighters, more bombers, more tanks, you know, more everything because they would have all those extra resources. And as you said, whether they agreed or not, manufacturing abilities in Russia to also help with the war effort against the Allies.
yeah,
Whether they were people that really wanted to do those things or not.
yeah. It's not really the issue.
They uh,
So
they would
I
still be
mean,
manufacturing those things whether
yeah,
they agreed with it or not.
whether they agreed with it or not, yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah. So I think we'll wrap it up there. We've kind of rambled for about 20 minutes or so. So I hope everybody's enjoyed the conversation, as always. And Han, do you have anything you want to promote before we get out of here?
I'm just youtube.com/Honstar. I do fun weekly live streams. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at HonstarYT. As always, Rob, been a pleasure. We talk all this history stuff we have for a long time, so I really enjoy this brain workout.
Yeah, it's always fun.
It's always a good time.
All right, so as always, I'm Rambling Canuck. Also have history with R&R. I'm hoping to get that up to 200 subscribers. We're at about a 164-ish, I think. So I'd like to boost that up. We're way over 300 here on Rambling Canuck, so that's awesome, and I thank every subscriber I've got. We do karaoke. We do this show. Karaoke is Saturdays at 9:05. Next week, because if I get this video out on time, cross my fingers. Next week on Tuesday, what is next Tuesday? I don't remember. Anyway, next Tuesday, after this video comes out, I am hoping to have a Canadian Summit at 5 p.m. Central, where we will get to enlighten all of our American friends on the stupidity that is Canadian politics, because our stupid Prime Minister has decided that we're going to have an election September the 20th.
I'm going to be a toxic American because we all Americans love to be toxic Americans. Not that I speak for the whole country, but you've talked to enough Americans, Rob, that you would probably agree with me. I imagine a Canadian Summit being people just apologizing to each other.
Oh, no.
And yes, I'm being a smart.
The problem is we're very quiet about it. We don't talk about it for a year and a half. We just do a quick pitch and then go to the election polls. So our Prime Minister has called an election, which gives him 90 days to set the date. They've set the date. It's September the 20th. So we get to go to a federal election. I don't know why Trudeau decided to do that, because I don't see him coming out of this. I mean, he's got a minority government right now. I don't see him getting a majority. I'd be very shocked if he gets a majority. But anyway, we'll save that for next Tuesday.
Just like you, I mean, not to hijack the end of your stream, or I mean your recording, but from what you told me previous to us going for the recording, it seems like a really risky. It seems like a really risky move, and I know you're going to talk about that on your Canadian Summit. But
yeah,
it seems like a very, very, very.
I'm very confused.
Risky move.
I don't know. I don't get it. I think in retrospect, he's going to look back and go, I should have just kept it where I couldn't get anything done. But anyway, with that said, thank you all. I hope to see you on karaoke or any other show. Please do drop by and take a listen to Honstar. If you like his shows, please subscribe. And hopefully we'll see you all at the summit. Take her easy, folks.